and or if you put your email in there, we'll answer it more in real time too. So all these materials, the relevant links provided today, the slides, and also the recording will be available on our NIFA Food and Nutrition Security webinar series. You can see Danielle Farley is putting all these relevant links through the chat. So give her a minute. She's going to catch up and get the speaker links in there, the relevant links, and also our NIFA Food and Nutrition Security webinar series page. Next slide. I do want to emphasize that today's webinar and this overall webinar series is part of NIFA's efforts to make progress on our departmental priorities listed here. These include 4 key priorities, the first of which is addressing climate change through climate smart agriculture, forestry, and clean energy, creating more and better market opportunities, tackling food and nutrition insecurity, and advancing racial equity, racial justice, and opportunity and rural prosperity. Next slide. Specific to tackling food and nutrition insecurity, we have assembled a team of more than 80 NIFA staff working across institutes and office to use research, education, extension, and innovation to advance food and nutrition security. You'll see today's team is a great example of how we work across our institutes and across agricultural sciences to address the departmental core priorities, including food and nutrition security. On the next slide, you'll see we have an array of funding opportunities within our flagship Agriculture Food Research Initiative, or AFRI for short, is illustrated here, that have been working over the last couple of years to strengthen intersections between climate, food systems, and nutrition security. And you can learn more about the breadth and depth of our efforts within AFRI and also beyond in our non-AFRI funding opportunities at our NIFA Food and Nutrition Security topic page, which Danielle will put in the chat, and also our prior webinar, which is listed at the bottom of this slide and is also on our webinar series page. And I will say in the future weeks, we're going to have an edition spotlighting some of our current accomplishments and current activities regarding food loss and food waste, which is under this umbrella of strengthening climate change, food systems, and nutrition security. Next slide. Today, I have the pleasure to kick off a webinar that will provide a deeper dive into one of our more relevant AFRI funding opportunities and really a great example of our agency's efforts to strengthen connections between climate, food systems, and nutrition security. As you'll hear today, we often refer to this relatively new priority area as the rapid response to extreme weather events. And this priority team is led by a fantastic team who will introduce themselves and who are illustrated here. And you'll see all their speaker bios provided in the chat today and have an opportunity through Q&A to meet all of them today. I do encourage you at NIFA, part of the reason why we did this series is to put faces to the people who are making these programs, these priority area accomplishments happen. So my big take home is to always reach out to them. At USDA, generally our last name at usda.gov is the way to approach us. All of the staff will also give their email, so feel free to reach out to them or feel free to reach out to me and I'll be happy to connect you. I'll pass it off to Dr. Mueller now, who will kick us off with getting to know the team.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Fleischhacker. And hello, everyone. It's so great to be with you this afternoon or this morning, wherever you're joining us from. You're going to be hearing from a couple members of our team, but I do want to first of all say that this team is supported by more than just the folks that you see here on the screen. A team of 10 people that are really devoted to rapidly responding to extreme weather and supporting this important work across food and agricultural systems. I am Ashley Mueller. I am a national program leader. I am in NIFA's Division of Family and Consumer Sciences in the Institute of Youth, Family, and Community. My background, I am a social scientist. Agricultural education is my focus, and I have had applied extension experience as well. So my program portfolio here at NIFA includes our extreme weather and disaster programs, as well as temporarily I'm leading our ag economics programs, and I am the lead national program leader for Smith-Lever, or Extension at 1862 funding. So thanks again for joining us today.
Good afternoon or good morning, everyone. I am Michelle Colby. I'm a veterinary epidemiologist by training, and I'm the National Program Leader for Animal Biosecurity in NIFA's Institute of Food Production and Sustainability in the Division of Animal Systems. And I work on agricultural biosecurity programs, primarily focused on animal health as well as biosecurity and biodefense policy topics within NIFA.
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Amr Fayyad. I am a plant pathologist by training, and I serve as a national program leader in the Plant Systems Protection Division at NIFA. I lead and co-lead programs related to plant protection and plant microbe interactions.
Hi, everyone. I'm Amy Ganguly. I am a national program leader in the Division of Global Climate. My background is ecology, and at NIFA, I lead and co-lead programs associated with climate change as well as sustainable agriculture.
Well, thank you, team. And as you can see here, just by hearing our backgrounds, we are truly a cross-cutting group of folks, and our interests definitely align and intersect with each other as we've learned over the past couple of years leading this program. So we're very excited to get into more about A1712 rapid response. But before we do that, we have some background information to share with you. So next slide, please. So we don't have to look very far to find headlines that really underscore the timeliness of a rapid response program. For example, it doesn't take much, even probably within the past month, to see headlines like this. We've pulled from the past year, but to really focus on the impacts of extreme weather events and disasters that ultimately affect the people that we serve, and of course, the food and agricultural systems that support them. Whether you live in the Midwest, like I do, where tornadoes, extreme wind, and hail is certainly a thing for us, or you're in the Southwest, where extreme heat and drought are certainly very prevalent, you can see and experience all of it, right? And so developing a program like we have and implementing that has been really important because of what you're seeing here on the screen. Ultimately, lives and livelihoods are affected by these extreme weather events and disasters. Next slide, please. So for the context here, and I'm a context-loving person, so it's important for me to understand, right, how we got to where we are today. And that requires us to really have a good foundational understanding of what we mean when we talk about extreme weather events and disasters. So we're sharing this definition of a disaster because I think it really kind of underpins why we're here today to talk about food and nutrition security and the systems that really support that and making a nutritious, affordable, accessible food supply for all. So a disaster is a serious disruption of the functioning of a community or a society at any scale. So I want to make an emphasis there at any scale, right? It could be seemingly a small incident or a large incident, but really now we're talking here about potential vulnerability and the vulnerabilities of the people that we serve. And so this disruption is due to hazardous events like extreme weather that interact then with the conditions of exposure, vulnerability, and capacity at that local level. Whether we're talking about a small rural community in Southern Illinois or a large city in Florida, right? We're talking about here vulnerability at the core of it that lead to disasters or the impacts of those incidents. Next slide, please. I think this quote is really helpful, I think, in telling the story about why we're looking through the lens of vulnerability that we are when we're talking about extreme weather and disaster response, particularly as it relates to food and nutrition security. So disasters happen when a community is not appropriately resourced or organized to withstand the impact and whose population is vulnerable because of poverty, exclusion, or socially disadvantaged in some way. I oftentimes will think of this very simple or seemingly simple calculation or math equation, if you will, of hazard plus vulnerability equals disaster. So we're talking here, right, about a hazard. It could be a strong, severe thunderstorm like you're seeing on the screen. It could be a hurricane. It could be a wildfire. When that interacts with the vulnerability of whatever population is being impacted, right? If that community is under-resourced and doesn't have the capacity to withstand that incident, it is likely that those impacts are going to be very great and affect a lot of facets of those stakeholders' lives, their livelihoods. So I think this is just a really important way to center this conversation that we're going to be having here today. Next slide, please. So I can't do a presentation like this and not share about the disaster management cycle, because it really frames where our competitive grant program falls within this cycle. I do want to specifically point out, before I kind of deep dive into each of these phases here, that a individual, a family, a small business owner, a community can experience this cycle at different phases simultaneously. Again, you know that I live in the Midwest. So for us, it's very common to have tornadoes and extreme storms through about that March to June timeframe, though we can get them any time of year. But also, right, we get extreme heat as well, starting in about June to probably through October. So now if we're looking at a specific community in my state of Nebraska, it is likely that these communities are thinking about different elements of these incidents and different phases depending on what they're dealing with. So I often like to start, when I talk about the disaster management cycle, with phase 2, because I think preparedness is something that a lot of us kind of go to that mindset when we're talking about extreme weather events and disasters. Also, I think it's very apt that our webinar here today falls right within National Preparedness Month. So this is a national effort where we're seeing a lot of information about what individuals, families, communities, and businesses can do to think about what they might do and take action for in preparing for an extreme weather event. So once we move kind of past that preparedness piece, right, that what might we do? We're practicing planning and connecting with our folks in our communication plans and building our to-go kits for our cars and maybe for places that we visit often, so that we're prepared for any kind of weather incident. That incident happens, and then we move from that preparedness phase into a response phase. Response can look very different depending on what the incident is, where it's occurring, and the scale of that incident. But oftentimes response is focused on first, that critical life-saving component, as well as mass care. So we think about feeding and sheltering people. We talk about debris removal. In the case of food and agricultural systems, we think about caring for livestock. So all of this kind of ties into what that individual, what that entity is going to do because of an incident that has happened. Then moving out of that response phase, we move into recovery. And recovery has kind of multiple sub-phases. There's often that kind of immediate recovery. So we're trying to get some of these pieces in place, maybe that low-hanging fruit, if you will, in order so that we can start figuring out next steps. But beyond that, there is medium and long-term recovery. And depending on that incident, depending on the vulnerabilities and say a community, a family, that recovery period can take weeks to even months and years. And so you can see here now, right, that any community, any individual can be in multiple disaster cycles, depending on what it is that they're dealing with. And then we move back into this idea of resilience, this kind of first phase of, it's not necessarily the new normal, but it's the life after that incident, and really understanding and reflecting on the incident that has happened, being able to incorporate those lessons learned, being able to tap into partnerships and networks to really then feed into that next phase of preparedness. So hopefully this is very helpful and illustrative to you as we now move in further into our presentation. Next slide, please. And so why does this matter? You know, thinking back not too long ago to that opening slide that we shared with all of those headlines, you know, it doesn't take us very much effort to find those incidents, right? We may even be dealing with some of them ourselves as we're coming together and convening today. But this matters because just in the first 6 months of 2024 alone, right, this is through June, we can see here the $1 billion weather and climate disasters that NOAA has put together this information and prepared for us, right? We're seeing severe weather outbreaks, we're seeing hail, We're even seeing, looks like winter storm and cold waves, right? So this again is just those billion-dollar disasters. Now take a step back and think about, right, oftentimes those disasters that happen at that local or regional level that just don't meet this threshold, but certainly are debilitating to individuals, families, business owners, and communities. Next slide, please. And so I love this graphic and want to give a shout out to my colleague, Amy, for sharing this, because this, I think, is a really helpful tool as well to frame our conversation even further here today. So when we look at the food and agricultural systems, right, we're talking about the stages of production, storage and processing, distribution, retail and markets, and consumption. And I'm not going to be able to cover all of this slide in detail. And so it's great that we're going to be able to share these slides for access here later. But I wanted to call out a few stages here just to make the connection again for why we're talking about this topic that we are today. And again, really justifying the need for a rapid response program like we've designed and are implementing. So if we look at that production stage, that very far left column on your screen here, we know that environmental variabilities include a wide range of variabilities, but in terms of extreme weather, we're talking about drought and extreme heat. We're talking about those temperature extremes or those swings, right? Very warm during the day, but maybe cold snaps or freezes at night that can impact crop production. We're talking about heavy rainfall events as well as wildfires. They then certainly influence, commodity prices and the input supply access of those. And then as we're talking about the cascading effects, particularly in that production stage, we're talking about things like natural resource use is increasing, agricultural income goes down, product quality may go down in the process. So that's just one example. As we move through the system here, I'm going to focus then on the farthest stage, the consumption stage. So again, no surprise, right? We're talking about those incidents like extreme temperatures. We're talking about those flooding events, just general seasonality and weather patterns, as well as wildfires here. But now we're talking about, right, the food that's made it through the production stages all the way to consumption. And now there's certainly some economic influences here as well. I want to point out food safety standards and the food safety that can be impacting the individual or the family unit, right, as they are thinking about consuming that food. And so then we look to these cascading effects here, right? Foodborne disease could certainly be in the mix here. We're looking at the need to maybe substitute foods because of the impacts that these incidents have had on the food at the consumption stage. We also may be looking at an increased level of spoilage of these foods, just simply because of these conditions, right? And so I think it's really important here that we look at this from a systems-wide approach. And I don't think it takes us with too much difficulty to be able to see the various impacts here and how they ultimately are impacting the people who are relying on affordable, safe, nutritious food supply. Next slide, please. So we launched a rapid response program, and I'm so excited that my colleague Michelle Colby is going to share more with you about our program, but this really tees up then the next part of this conversation for her. So we've shared why climate change exacerbates the risk of extreme weather related disasters. So we know that they disrupt and can disrupt, specifically referring to that previous slide, our food and agricultural systems. So in addition to land degradation, the agricultural supply chains are often adversely impacted. So it doesn't, again, take us too far to see here. Now we know cause and effect. I love this graphic here on the right because it's another illustration of why we're talking about what we are today and why I think we as program staff are so motivated to support a program like this. Because we know ultimately at any stage here that you see on the right-hand part of the screen, right, NIFA and our ability to support the important research, innovation, outreach and extension work that happens is really critical to ensuring food security. And with that, next slide, and Michelle, over to you.
Thank you, Ashley. So as we look at the purpose of this program, it's really designed to rapidly deploy strategies and fill knowledge and information gaps. It's intended to focus on our food and agricultural supply chains and all the people that support them. Our goal is to support projects that buffer disaster impacts and ensure the availability of safe, nutritious, and affordable food for everybody. Funded projects must directly address effects associated with an extreme weather event or disaster. Applicants have an opportunity to justify the urgency of their situation and articulate their specific, unique, and individualized needs for funding. So we recognize that no two weather events are the same, and neither are their impacts. And that for that reason, applicant eligibility is not tied to disaster declarations, because we recognize that in some cases, getting an actual declaration can take weeks to even months. So we don't monitor extreme weather events and disasters or announce an open call for submissions. Instead, we encourage the applicants to use data from the National Weather Service, the National Integrated Heat Health Information System, local or state farm service agencies, state or federal emergency management agencies, and even local partners to justify the direct need for rapid response activities and to inform their project narratives. We go to the next slide. So our goal is to fund projects that provide solutions that can be rapidly adopted. In our conversations with potential applicants, we encourage a variety of innovative approaches to extension projects and integrated extension and research that may include but are not limited to trainings and exercises, communication strategies, tools and technologies, management strategies, and logistics. Next slide, please. NIFA encourages projects to consider well-developed extension and/or outreach activities as part of their project design. Reaching end users is a critical component of this program. Applicants must be able to provide a clear strategic approach to reaching those end users. That's something that our reviewers look for specifically during the review process. Next slide, please. So in this program, Rapid Response to Extreme Weather program, we seek applications that focus on critical and urgent solutions in rapid response to disaster impacts on the nation's food and agriculture systems, clearly describe short-term deliverables within 3 months of the award receipt. That's a specific requirement of this program area priority. As a rapid response program, we want to make sure that these products are immediately available to end users. And clearly define the geographic scope of the project as related to the weather-related event or disaster. And the program has 3 emphasis areas. Project applications must address one or more of the following emphasis areas: either agro-ecosystem resilience, food safety, nutrition security, and agricultural commodity security, and health, well-being, and safety. Obviously, for the purposes of this webinar, the emphasis here is on food safety, nutrition security, and agricultural commodity security, but the program is much broader than that. We go to the next slide. So proposals are eligible to apply for up to $300,000 per project, and that includes indirect costs for project periods of up to 12 months. This is for standard and strengthening standard grants. Eligible project types include extension projects or integrated extension and research projects, and applications are accepted on a continuous basis, and that's tied to the real-time extreme weather events and disasters. Those applications must be submitted within 45 days of an extreme weather event or disaster. Though, as I said before, we recognize that those disasters are fluid in nature, so just because a hurricane hits on day 0 doesn't mean that that has to be submitted within 45 days of day 0, because those impacts from a hurricane may be felt for weeks to months. So it's just really important that the applicants include in their justification what their 45-day window is. So when does their day 0 start? Droughts, heat waves, et cetera, those can be even trickier. So it's really important. That justification from the applicant is very important. Following submission, to ensure the application is processed in a timely manner, it is really important that folks email us to let us know, since this is a continuous application deadline, to let us know. And that email is in the RFA, but it's also AFRI-rapidresponse@usda.gov. And I believe that at this point, I turn it back over to Ashley.
Great, thank you, Michelle. So we're very excited because we have a handful of projects that we're looking forward to sharing with you here today that are directly addressing that emphasis area that Michelle called out earlier. So with that, we'll move to the next slide and we'll highlight our first project. This project is out of Puerto Rico, and it is in response to Hurricane Fiona. So on our project slides, you'll see a QR code, as well as we directly linked to the project summary here. So if you want to access the slide deck later, you certainly can and deep dive further into these projects. But this is addressing urban communities and their susceptibility to food shortages due to their reliance on non-local and international food sources. So we have a treat for you today. Dr. Daniel Baer from the University of Puerto Rico at Mayagüez pre-recorded a video about his specific project. And so rather than us talk about it, we wanted him to share directly with you what he's doing. And so with that, let's go ahead and move to the video, please.
My name is Daniel Baer, and I'm the soil specialist with the Agricultural Extension Service at the University of Puerto Rico, Mayagüez. Our project is titled Rehabilitation of Disturbed Urban Soils for Vegetable Production in Tropical Regions. Extreme weather events have significantly impacted Puerto Rico, with over 1/3 of Puerto Ricans reporting food insecurity, a situation worsened by recent climate events. Hurricanes such as Hurricane Maria in 2017 and Hurricane Fiona in 2022 have caused severe disruptions in the food supply chain, leading to food shortages lasting days or even weeks after the events. Hurricane Maria wiped out 80% of the island's crop value, resulting in a $780 million loss in agricultural yields and increasing food imports by 80 to 95%. Additionally, it generated 2.5 million tons of debris, equivalent to 2.5 to 3 years' worth of landfill capacity. Hurricane Fiona caused widespread flooding, power outages, and supply chain interruptions, particularly affecting urban communities that were highly vulnerable to food shortages. Urban agriculture can represent an important partner for bolstering community resilience to natural disasters. One of the major concerns for urban agriculture is soil contamination with heavy metals and organic legacy contaminants known to be persistent and to bioaccumulate. As the severity of natural disasters increases due to climate change, preservation of urban soil quality and fertility are important concerns for isolated island communities such as Puerto Rico that strive for self-sustainability and import independence. Our goal is to improve food security in Puerto Rico after extreme weather events by promoting urban agriculture and conducting research to mitigate exposure to soil contaminants in urban areas. Our first objective is to evaluate the capacity of biochar for soil rehabilitation based on contaminant mitigation studies. Locally sourced biochar produced from debris, organic wastes, and other waste low-value products are being evaluated for their potential for soil rehabilitation. This set of biochars was tested for basic properties and specific capacities for contaminant sorption. Our second objective is focused on the development of safe farming practices based on the studied biochars. Field experiments are being conducted to assess the effect of biochar on soil health and crop production, ultimately helping to establish its efficacy improving urban agricultural productivity in areas impacted by contaminants. Field trials have been established at extension centers within major city centers such as San Juan, Ponce, and Mayagüez. Application of bamboo biochar with properties for high sorption capacity and retention of contaminants found in urban soils is being studied in situ under experimental field plot conditions. Field day tours guided by investigators have been conducted at the Juana Diaz and Gurabo agricultural experiment stations in December of 2023 and May of 2024, which focused on the use of organic amendments, including the application of biochar for soil and plant health. Due to high rainfall in the San Juan area, a removable high tunnel has also been constructed at the Gurabo Agricultural Experimental Station. Our final objective is to promote home and community gardens through 4-H and family workshops and the creation of an information hub with educational tools and resources for the general public. These resources include a home garden guide, information sheets on soil health, managing urban soils, and the use of biochar in urban agriculture. Additionally, new specialty crops in Puerto Rico have been introduced for urban agriculture. We look forward to 4-H and family home garden workshops that are scheduled for the end of this year and the beginning of 2025. We anticipate the results and outcomes of this project will be broadly useful for other regions, as many nations in the near future will be faced with challenges to sustain exponentially growing populations with limited food, water, and land resources subjected to changing climatic conditions. My name is Daniel Baer, and
Great. Well, thank you for that, for allowing us to play this video. And we hope that that was really informative to you as a participant here to hear directly from Dr. Baer about the great work that's being done in Puerto Rico in response to a hurricane incident. Next slide, please. In addition to Dr. Baer's project, we have a few others that we wanted to highlight here with you today. The first comes out of Hawaii, the Hawaii Public Health Institute. Mr. Dennis Chase is the project director on this project, which is titled GRACE, Gardens for Resilience and Climate Education. So a little over a year ago, many of us watched as those wildfires impacted the island of Maui. And it was no surprise that the folks there were really wanting to do something to respond to that traumatic incident, specifically one that so deeply affected food and agricultural systems there. So the objective of Mr. Chase's project is to train and equip school garden educators. So they're working directly with schools across Hawaii to use gardening and gardens as tools to deal with traumatic events. And so they're really focused on an extension or outreach focused project that is working with community partners to then partner with schools to ensure that students have access and are learning about these important components of gardens. And so some of the activities that they are coordinating around this project include making and sharing tisane with herbs from the garden. They are doing a really large effort on seed saving and seed sharing, as well as food saving and preservation. And then, of course, given the incident that they're directly dealing with, focusing on using fire resilient landscaping and incorporating that in schools and other locations across Hawaii. So we just want to give recognition to Mr. Chase and his project team for the important work that they're doing. Next slide, please. Also out of Hawaii is another project related to the Maui wildfires as well, and the Sustainable Molokai Project, which is directly supporting and working with producers within Maui who were affected by the wildfires, particularly focusing on marketplaces and providing technical assistance, consultation and education. So kind of building this coalition or cohort of producers with this awardee led by Ms. Ronzello to ensure that these producers have information and are able to take that and make decisions for their own farms. So what this project is doing through Ms. Ronzello's leadership is they are leveraging local food hub and other farm to food assistance programs. They are also then going directly to these farmers. So this kind of peer-to-peer relationship here where they're gathering information and learning what these farmers are facing in the aftermath of the wildfires, as well as then working with them to find solutions and co-create those solutions together. In addition, this project is also managing a small grants program that is directly then supporting these farmer-specific needs. So it's very timely, it is very relevant and meaningful for those stakeholders that are being reached. So a big shout out to Ms. Ronzello and her project team for really having the vision here to bring people together and think about production in a very new and different way. Next slide, please. And then our final project that we wanted to highlight here for you today is out of California. Mr. Steve Schwartz is the project director on this project, and it is called Growing Response Capacity for Extreme Weather Disasters Through Faith and Secular Partnerships. And this is directly responding to flooding incidents in the state of California. And again, very much focused on that extension or outreach component and looking at the faith community as a community to be leveraged during times of disasters and extreme weather events. Often faith communities have houses of worship or spaces in which they bring people and gather that can also serve as food accessibility sites. And so through Mr. Schwartz's project, they are looking at how to assemble best practices regarding making those sites available and communicating that they're available to the broader community. So they are inventorying faith facilities, They have been providing technical assistance and trainings on food distribution, including a disaster SNAP enrollment, food preparation and storage, and even farm worker welfare. And they are also hosting or have hosted a conference to then bring communities together and share these best practices, have those important conversations, and ultimately plan for the next extreme weather event or incident. So thank you to Mr. Schwartz and his team for the amazing work they're doing out of California. And so with that, I'd like to move to the next slide, please. Which just brings us to our wrap-up slide here, but folks, we are not done because we still have some more time. So I wanted to highlight here the webpage for our program. I think we're going to go ahead and put that link in the chat. This is all things A1712. So we have provided some background on the program, link to the request for applications. We've pre-recorded videos for people who may be interested in applying to the program. And also Michelle shared our email address earlier, but we also have it here on the slide, and hopefully we'll get that in the chat as well. This is our shared team email address. We truly believe in rapidly responding, even so in our communication with folks who are interested in this program. And so we highly recommend, if you do have a question about this program, to reach out to that shared inbox, because our team has a really good coverage of that. And we want to make sure that you get your questions answered as quickly as possible so that we don't hold you up in putting together a really great project idea and move forward on it. And so with that, let's go ahead and move to, I believe, the last slide. And so I would invite my team here and now, and of course, Dr. Fleischhacker as well, to open up the floor for any questions and comments. We're here to have a great conversation.
Hello, I'm just making sure all of our 4 panelists are in gallery view and set for today. I just really want to start off with a big standing applause and just really gratitude for this team. I think, again, with the rapid response nature of this work, and as Dr. Mueller ended with like them even taking that to their email communication, I really just want to say a heartfelt thank you. They've really stepped up on this really emerging area of need in climate change. And so very much appreciate their warm welcome to integrating nutrition security into that focus. As you saw from the Grantees project, food and nutrition security is very much at play within the projects, and very much, I think, teamwork makes the dream work in terms of this team that's been put together today and also in their presentation. So we have all 4 of the team. They introduced themselves at the top. I'll have them introduce themselves again for those who joined late with us today, with answering my first question for them, as we encourage all of you, as you ask questions or comments, particularly on this relatively new funding opportunity, please use the Zoom QA. We will integrate participant questions and comments throughout today's presentation. We have till 2:30, so we have time. Don't be shy. And I will kick off today's conversation just asking, again, all of our panelists to introduce themselves and also just really share something exciting that they've learned doing this really new mechanism of a rapid response, and something they're looking forward to as we really are just starting to kind of get the initial lessons learned out of these initial projects that were highlighted today. So Dr. Mueller, we'll have you start, and then you can kind of pass it off to your team.
Oh, Sheila, that was a good question. Good questions. Well, to reintroduce myself, I am Ashley Mueller. I'm a national program leader in the Division of Family and Consumer Sciences. And my background is agricultural education, so social scientist, and have done work at the state level with the cooperative extension system doing disaster education coordination. But for me, I think, what I've learned from this program is just how incredible it is to have a team of folks, and not just the folks you see on the screen, but our full team here, that really have these lived experiences that they're bringing to this particular program. And so as we're being invited to make presentations, and as we continue to design and refine the program so that we're ultimately meeting stakeholders' needs, it's just been really fun to see how this program has evolved, especially now that we have tangible projects that we're supporting, and seeing and hearing, what's going on at the local level and the impact that we're able to really facilitate from our side. So that's just been, I think, a continual lesson I just learned. And there's always something that amazes me with a program like this. So I'll pass it to one of my colleagues.
I guess we'll stay in the order that we introduced ourselves earlier. So I'm Michelle Colby. I'm a veterinary epidemiologist by training. Something I didn't mention earlier is that I've been working at the nexus of animal science, veterinary medicine, and homeland and national security for the last 20 years. And often in my career, I've been the only person in the room that's been the advocate for food security is national security. And I think that's really important and something that NIFA and this program bring to the table often. And, you know, I think something I've learned working on this program is, well, I appreciate the flexibility of this program because I get bored easily. So there's never a dull moment working on this program, but the dedication of all the different stakeholders we work with and working with the non-academic awardees that we've been working with, because there's such a broad spectrum of people that NIFA can fund under AFRI and under some of our other RFAs that most people aren't aware of. And it's been a real joy working with all of our awardees, academic and non-academic, and seeing the variety of people that we can fund and working with all of them.
So good afternoon, good morning again. My name is Amr Fayyad, and I am a plant pathologist by training with expertise in plant virology, plant biotic interactions, and integrated pest management. So at NIFA, I am involved in ag biosecurity programs and plant microbe interactions. What I have appreciated from this rapid response program is, as Michelle said, the diversity of the projects that we receive, but also the community that we are hopefully fostering. So we do project directors meeting on quarterly basis, and this is one of the requirements for the awardees is to give us updates on quarterly basis. So we've seen more interactions between the different projects, and it's really special to see the progress and the impact that these awards and the awardees are doing in their work, and the big reach that they have on their communities.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Amy Ganguly. I am a national program leader in the Global Climate Division. I'm an ecologist by training. My work has dealt with the restoration ecology. I did quite a bit of work on fire behavior and fire effects, so this program is near and dear to my heart. And at NIFA, I provide leadership on several of our climate change programs, as well as sustainable agriculture. So some of the things that really excite me about this project is this program is filling a gap that doesn't currently exist, not just at NIFA, but in several of our other funding programs that are targeting agriculture, natural resources, and food systems. So it was really exciting to do that. We also challenged ourselves under the AFRI authority to get the funding for these projects out the door quickly. And again, it takes an army beyond the team that we described here, also involves our awards management division. So it's a real testament to what we can do when we all work together. So building on what Amr said about these quarterly project director meetings, it's been really exciting to see the synergies that have developed. And so when you look at the kind of projects that we have funded, we have the wildfire people talking about how their work could connect, and hopefully that provides some additional fuel for future work. So one other element that I wanted to touch on, and this connects to the question that was in the Q&A box. Some of these projects and what they're aiming to do can seem like really something that's more appropriate for 2 to 3 to maybe even 5-year projects. What this program is doing very effectively is that it's providing that initial platform to address a piece of the puzzle, right? And we hope we will consider this program a success if these projects are used as a catalyst to do something else, right? To build on this. And so with the specific question addressing the Puerto Rico project, within the first 3 months of their project, they were making substantial progress on not only establishing the research, but also in engaging in some of their extension activities. So again, very excited about this program. We look forward to hearing some more of your questions.
Well, and again, thank you guys all for reintroducing yourselves and also sharing things that excite you about this program. And I think giving a lot of food for thought for folks who might be considering this as an avenue. I know it's a little bit different because it is an extreme weather event, so we don't necessarily want to plan for this, so to speak, but it is nice that this opportunity is there. It does definitely fill a gap in terms of the needs and the increasing frequency that we're seeing with these extreme weather events. So it's just really nice, as you were hearing, like it is a platform for addressing this research gap, but also, you know, food for thought for further growth with these projects. So one of the questions, as was addressed, was just kind of asking about this, like, seems like, you know, short duration or long duration, like how could, you know, folks scope the work? And then also another question asked about examples of agroecosystem resilience and production projects. I will, you know, say with the start of this being a food and nutrition security webinar series, I did ask particularly for this team to deep dive into the food security relevant projects and aspects of it. But I will, with great, since it's ask our panelists to kind of elaborate further on some of the other aspects of the projects that are evolving in the other areas. Dr. Mueller, do you want to go first?
Well, I was going to actually kick it over to one of my team members. So if they want to have an opportunity to highlight any specific projects outside of what we've shared that have come to mind. So folks, I'm thinking some of our wildfire related projects that we've seen. Amy, you're nodding, so I may just yield to you first.
Yeah, if you're able to click on the link to our funded projects, you'll notice that we, especially with the fires that happened recently in Texas and Hawaii, we saw several proposals that were specifically looking at how to build resilience and use some tools to help with that. And one project I want to highlight, this was based on 2 years ago, the fires that hit New Mexico, which is really close to where I live. The project in this area, a lot of the fences were burned down, right? And when you're managing livestock, that can be extremely challenging. And producers in that area, this location is right adjacent to federal land as well. And so there's a need to make sure that you are keeping animals where they belong and not trespassing. And so this project, they were deploying technology based on virtual fencing and working closely with producers, but then also the Forest Service, which were very active participants. And again, when we think of enterprise resilience as well as the land management elements, I think that project is a really great example of that. And then there's several other examples, both from agronomic and wildland settings. So.
And I really appreciated how Dr. Mueller started off with really emphasizing how this project really is a great example of integrating lived experiences. And as many of you guys mentioned, how we are increasingly seeing, you know, strong community partners leading the grants and or partnering on these projects. Do you guys want to elaborate on that piece? I think particularly for our listeners and those who will hear the recording, you know, just some lessons learned for building those types of relationships, integrating lived experience, you know, how you've seen that in a successful manner, I think will be helpful for potential applicants.
And kick things
Dr.
off first.
Colby, or who wants to go first?
Things off and then let folks also jump in. But you know, I think too, we've had some interesting conversations with potential applicants over the past couple of years, right? Because they see sometimes extension listed and may assume we're talking about extension capital E, right? Reference to the cooperative extension system. And I think back to what Dr. Colby was saying, you know, about the applicants, right? And our awardees are very diverse and it also include a lot of community-based organizations as well. And so I think that that's really important here when we're talking about a program like this, right? Is that there are opportunities for folks to come together to really do engagement and outreach work, right? So extension little e. And we, I think, want to emphasize that that is attainable through a program like this. And so we know, right, this is a response program. So there has to be an incident, right, that geographically defined that an applicant has to note. But you know, the time to think about putting in a proposal could be now, right? You may not be actively dealing with something, but if you're interested in making a connection at the local level, or and you live somewhere where there are incidents that regularly happen, this is a great opportunity to start those conversations, look at those shared stakeholders, target audiences and needs, and really think about, right, your lived experience you're coming from, right, but others too that may be different than yours, and how you can really meet a gap. So anyway, yeah, I'll open it up to others that may have more to add, but I wanted to make sure we got in the extension little e because it's so important that folks see themselves in a program like this as well.
To add to what Ashley said, I think the successful projects have really been great at leveraging existing resources and really making the connection between the different stakeholders and being clear in their expected interactions and expectations. I think that's really key for the success of these projects.
And any others want to comment on? Ooh, go, Dr. Colby.
Sure, I would just add, and I think maybe combine the last two questions or discussion topics. You know, we have at least one project in California where, from the public health community, which is not necessarily a community that's grounded in extension, so they're more on the little e side, but they did a really great job of pulling together all the impacted communities, and they're looking at rapid response to extreme weather to promote human health and agro-ecosystem resilience in the San Joaquin Valley. And that what they're looking at is a lot of the high rain events and what that does to the water table and how that impacts West Nile virus occurrence. But what they ended up doing is having a lot of impacts on how people manage the water they're storing for agriculture, irrigation, et cetera. And so it's having a lot more impacts than I think even they thought, and resulting in some interactions with the Big E extension community. So some of these have just kind of snowballed in ways that we didn't even intend, nor did they. So it's been a really exciting to watch some of these as in our quarterly PD meetings as they've evolved.
And Amy, do you want to share any reflections?
I think that's good. That's just probably address some of the other questions.
I don't, oh, here, did others come in? No, we don't have any other new ones coming. Okay. One is asking if there's a matching requirement.
And since I'm already off mic, I can address that. And so generally speaking, no. However, there are a few rare circumstances where there might be a matching criteria, and generally speaking, that's addressing commodity-specific questions and or commodity-specific topics. And we, if you're concerned about match needs, please reach out and we can address that questions. And if any of my colleagues have anything else clarifying on that, please speak up.
And then this question came in relating to plants. So I'm going to put this one on air. And it said, we have published work related to disaster and plant pathology frameworks, similar to disaster anthropology and others, essentially looking at compounding and secondary effects of extreme events as they relate to pest and disease. Might this grant be a good avenue to deploy this framework for local use cases?
So I would say that it could be the best advice that all of us NPLs would normally recommend is that schedule a call with us, send us a small write-up, and then based on that, we can make a determination on what is the best program, what is the best fit. So, you know, I'm looking at this description and I'm thinking, depending on the way the specific objectives are, it could be in this program, it could be in the ag biosecurity program, it could be in the crop protection and pest management. So this is why it's important to share more detail. And again, encourage you to send us a short description.
And again, I think the overall purpose of today's deep dive on this particular priority area is it is relatively new. We want to make sure you know the program team, know the types of projects that are being funded here. And also, again, at that big level, know there are many other funding priority areas in the climate, food systems, and nutrition security space. And our NPLs here are listed today, and then on the broader webinar series on climate, food system, nutrition security are very much accessible to walk you through what are your best options, both in the short and the long term. So please, as we're all encouraging you, don't be shy to reach out to these national program leaders. We also have our topic pages, as Danielle shared earlier, our food and nutrition security topic page. We also shared our nutrition and food systems topic page. We have a food loss and waste topic page, which will feature in 2 weeks on a webinar specific to food loss and food waste. We have a variety of ways that's compiled the relevant funding opportunities, so you can kind of look before you reach out. But we also help you navigate. So just don't be shy to say, hey, this is something I'm working on. How might I approach this? And I say it's probably the best 30 minutes just in terms of navigating some of your best fits. So please don't be shy. I do want to wrap up today just really with a big round of applause to this team for really setting up a new priority area here at NIFA with a new funding mechanism. And as all of them are shouting out, it really does take a village to do something like this, not just the program teams, the program specialists, the funding and grant specialists, the communication specialists. Really, it does take a village, and greatly appreciate them. Giving shout outs to all the aspects that make a program like this happen. And then particularly today to all the grantees who've been successful in this program, and also those who are applying. Really, we're learning as you go. So applications are just as important to the process as we figure out how best to support you in this research needs. I do want to have each of the panelists share one kind of key lesson learned they'd really want to give to the grantee community and those who are considering applying, how best to approach this particular funding opportunity that's new, and then more of the broader portfolio for the relevant work they showcase. So we'll have Dr. Mueller start us off, and then she'll pass it off to her teammates.
Sounds great. Well, my advice is don't be shy. If you are interested or something is confusing or you just need more information, please reach out. This is what we're here for, is to help navigate that for you and to be that kind of sounding board, like Amr shared that example, right, with the question about that framework. This is where we can really be helpful. So please don't think twice about sending an email or reaching out, because we're happy to have that conversation.
I'll add a vote to what Ashley said, and I'll give you the advice that I give to anyone who calls and asks me about any program. Read the RFA. I'm going to say it again. Read the RFA. Please read the RFA. All right, Amr, your turn.
All right, to add to what my colleagues have said, I would say if you decide to apply after you've read the RFA, is be very clear in your application. Use those pages wisely. And again, be very clear, because it has to be clear to the reviewers, the external reviewers that review your application.
Okay, and I'll round us out. So one thing I'd like to remind people, as Ashley stated well during her presentation, is if you are interested in this program, start planning now. And really consider having a conversation. If you're applying from an academic institution, have a conversation with your sponsored, your Office of Grants or Sponsored Programs Office to let them know that, this is real. This program does move fast. And so if we're being nimble, it requires the institution to be nimble to meet our guidelines. And so again, start working on that documentation and attend our FAQ sessions so that you can learn more about the program if you or reach out. So thank you.
And I'll round it out with a big plug that NIFA always likes to give in terms of learning about our programs. Volunteer to review. Serving on our review panels, whether it's for this priority area or others, is just so informative to submitting and competing well for our program. So please do your public service. You will find it's more benefits to you and your long-term than us in many ways, but we greatly appreciate all your time and effort and really do want to encourage that. So we'll make sure that's in the chat as well. I do want to wrap up today because we are at time. It's just a heartfelt thank you for this team. I've had the privilege to work with Dr. Mueller and Dr. Guliana in many ways on the efforts to increase climate, food systems, and nutrition security. So without surprise, they have been fantastic. But today it was a really nice way to connect better with Dr. Colby and also Amir Farid. So very much greatly appreciate this team's just excellent example of teamwork here and in the broader work to come as they grow this program. So please join us on thanking all of them. I thank all of you guys for attending and your formative questions. And then also encourage you to join us for future editions. I mentioned we'll have food loss and food waste coming up October 2nd. We'll have an edition that's really focusing on our higher eds later in October. And then we'll also have some coming in November, December, focusing on integrating nutrition and health, our efforts here at NIFA, and just our broader efforts on tackling food and nutrition security, the Secretary's core priority. So thank you for joining us. We'll make sure the webinar series link is in the chat. And so feel free to reach out to me if you need any of those event pages. We're excited to see you at future ones. Thank you. Have a great week, and feel free to email me if you have any remaining questions about this edition or future. The recordings will be posted on our webinar series site. Give us a couple weeks, but we will in real time. If you need slides, we will share. So thank you for all your help today, and looking forward to seeing you on the future editions. Have a great week and goodbye.